Ash, can you see this?
Yes, I can. I've never seen anything like it.
We've got this far, we must go on. We have to go on.
Ash, if you can see this.
This looks so good, man. We need to talk about the bonus situation. Hello humans, and welcome to this, the climactic episode in our alien derelict ship recreation. Now, JP has shown you how to build a 3D resin printed miniature. He's shown you how to make these mad volcanic rock formations. He's shown you how to texture and paint all of those elements to enhance their detail and exhibit a sense of scale. Now, finally, it's lights and camera time. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is gonna bloody work, you know. So first things first, we get our camera and motion control slider rig set up as low as it will go. We're using a raised stage or rostrum for the base of our planet's surface, enabling us to get the camera to floor level. And we're using this weird case as a stand-in for our ship. Speaking of which... All right, it's show and tell time. Obviously, I haven't seen this till today. You've been beavering away.
Yes.
Dude, this is beautiful. The detail on this thing, and I know this is one of the sort of fundamental reasons we wanted to do this series, is to really demonstrate just the level of detail you get out of resin printing and how it's enabled us to really create a miniature of relatively small size, but just with really exceptional detail.
Yeah, so it's finally done, or at least to the state that I'm letting it go to start.
A miniature is never finished.
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a process, but it's been a really fun and interesting one. Learned a lot along the way, specifically about the process of 3D printing. I think it'll be very interesting to see what results we can get from shooting something this scale that was originally
20 foot.
a lot larger.
Yeah, no, it's magnificent. And it's really cool to see this ship that I know so well, more so from the first couple of films, or really mainly the first film, which we're recreating shots from.
Yeah.
And only seeing it from very specific angles. And now it's quite fun to see, oh, what's this? What's that? So this isn't the design from the first Alien, this is from Prometheus,
Yes,
right?
this is technically the Juggernaut from, I think, Prometheus.
Right.
And yeah, it changes very slightly from the original design. The original Giga concept and execution of that design was a lot more sculptural.
Yeah.
A lot more kind of organic and bony. And yeah, tendril.
Yeah.
But I quite like how they redesigned it from Prometheus onwards. And it's a really, obviously, unique design. I don't think even now it's been rivaled in terms of uniqueness.
Yeah.
It's got a place in history in a way, like sci-fi history, in terms of not only the design, but also the uniqueness of that original film, where they had effectively two different artists focus on the man-made ships or technology versus the alien world.
Which is just
creator.
a great idea, isn't it?
Fantastic, because you're inherently going to get completely contrasting styles and approaches.
It's not symmetrical, which would be the first thing most sort of ship designers or vehicle designers, generally speaking, it's about symmetry, aerodynamics, whereas this thing's just mad. But that's the beauty of it. It's like an alien ship probably would be just something we would absolutely not expect.
Yeah.
And yeah, the paint job's gorgeous. I know you want to spend another month on it, but tough. The other thing that I'm seeing for the first time, he sent me pictures and stuff, but it's never the same as seeing it for reals, is the rock stuff that you've done.
Don't be fooled by the rocks I've got.
He's still JP from the blog. I remember you telling me how you're going to do it. I love it. So expanding foam.
It's
So good, man, and it has a real alien quality to it in that sort of Giga-esque kind of way. These are hilarious. I mean, that could almost be a chest burster in a way, like deformed one, maybe from Resurrection or something.
Mouldy mushroom.
There you go.
There's lots of different ways of creating ththings like rocks and scenic pieces out of foam. Most obvious way is to sculpt it, glue blocks together and carve and make a lot of mess doing it that way. But yeah, for our purposes, expanding foam worked quite well because it inherently wants to develop and dry in quite a Giga-like way, where it forms these smooth surfaces as well as create
like the
tendrils.
alien head.
Yeah, it's working with the time and the resources that you've got to spare. A technique like this is something that can be really quick to knock out.
Beautiful, man. Right, time to start building our set. We start off by pouring a mix of stones and cat litter onto our surface to give us a quick, rocky base. We use a couple of our rocks to prop up the ship, but given the weight, we end up fixing it at the base with a clamp. With our camera positioned right on the deck, looking up at the ship, we're actually not going to see the entire surface of our tabletop. As we place individual rocks around the ship and its periphery, we start to create a horizon line. Checking the shot, we move them around to try different positions. Anything close to the camera looks really big, so we use the smaller rocks at the front. The larger rocks can then be positioned behind them at a distance to create depth, which will be accentuated by the haze we'll put in. The stone litter mix is pretty light in colour compared to our rocks, so we make a dirty water solution and give it a wet down. I've done an initial pre-light consisting of 2 suns, or in our case 2 tungsten Fresnels with CTB gels and diffusion. Above, I've rigged 2 4-bank Kino flows with diffusion and a China silk. This is to help lift the ambient exposure as subtly as possible, while our Fresnels act as a profile key and backlight. Because we're dealing with quite light stones and stuff in the foreground, JP's done a good wet down with some dirty water, which has dropped it back a lot, which is great. But I think what we really want to do is kind of pull light around the ship a little bit, just to kind of draw the eye in, almost like it's being held in time. So I've set up this flag, and that's just taking the light off this foreground surface. So we've got a nice amount of light hitting our ship, but it's just really taking it off there. But then what we're also getting, of course, is the kick from our sort of sunlight key light, or one of our 2 suns. And so I'm going to slide this one in here, and you can see it's literally just taking all the light off that foreground. We're still getting some kick off our backlight and a little off the side, but what that's now done is really just created it's not obvious, because they're soft lights and we're flagging at distance, so there's no hard shadows or anything like that. But what it has done is created this kind of light around the ship. And so that's where your eye goes, because everything else is just falling kind of to, not complete darkness, but it's pretty dark. Beautiful. Can't wait to get the smoke on. We want to shoot at least 50 frames a second. And with our lens stopped down at around the f10 mark, we need all the exposure we can get. So I throw another Kino beneath our key to give us a little more oomph.
Ash, can you hear me? Ash!
Yes, I can hear you.
What was your special order?
I told you in the last one.
What was it?
To encourage all those watching to help keep InCamera alive by supporting them on Patreon. Priority 1. All other priorities rescinded.
What about YouTube, you son of a bitch?
The algorithm favors creators who produce quick content at high volume with clickbait titles. And the ad revenue's a joke as well.
Bullshit.
Patreon offers sustainability for long-form, independent creators.
You admire it.
I admire its purity, its independence. Those who can afford to support creators for those who can't. A model based on kindness.
I've heard enough of this, and I'm asking you to pull the plug.
Last thing. Like and subscribe.
This is where we need LED lights. You know I love a tungsten, but damn, in a small room. Okay, so my flagging continues. So I put a drape up on the top light to take a lot of the light, or as much light as I can, off the background. The last thing you want to see is the ripples in those drapes.
So that's to try and take some light off there, but we're going to get some kick off this guy as well. So I'm just going to bring a wee flag and just bring him up there just to try and take that edge off. I'd use a bigger one, but I'm out of flags. You know. Yeah, all right. And I'm just trying to get as much off this curtain as I can. You'd have light coming out there, hitting the back of this. It's just a really handy thing just to stop that happening. But the hope is that we'll haze the room, so we'll get an overall smokiness, Ridley Scott level smokiness, which is a lot. And then yeah, it's time to experiment with the new MicroFogger that we have been sent, which is incredibly exciting. Like this one's a serious upgrade, and it comes with lots of really clever attachments. One of which actually creates a sort of a dry ice almost kind of effect that's going to hover on the ground. We've done a little test. It's like, as soon as you put that in, okay, it's going to work. And everything felt fine. As soon as we gave it a go, it's like, yeah, it's going to be fine.
We're going to get clean takes of all of our setups so that when we come to composite our shots, we can preserve all those gorgeous details of the miniature before, well, you know.
Nice. All right, smoke her up.
We start by smoking up the room with the Colt to give us an overall haze. Then we go in with the MicroFogger. This is the Mark V, and it's a significant upgrade from its predecessors. This so-called dry ice attachment creates a dense flow which hugs the ground. Because the Fogger is essentially a miniature smoke machine, it creates really localized smoke, creating more perceived depth, which all helps to sell the scale. We play around with putting isolated smoke at different depths, knowing we can dial each layer up and down in post. And if you ever find yourself thinking you may have gone too far with the smoke, have a word with yourself.
Why more smoke? Because it's the Ridley Scott way. Going high on the wiggly meter. I pushed hard for smoke.
Yeah, now we're talking.
This is our widest setup. We're shooting with a Tokina 11-16mm lens, allowing us some easy reframe options. With our trusty Kessler Moco rig giving us nice repeatable moves, allowing us to layer up our clean and smoke passes. Time to reset for our second setup, which is really just a closer version of the first. Unfortunately, because we can't move the camera any closer, we have to move the ship and the set.
Always happy when I get to use gaffer tape for something. It's like a little jankiness. You always need a little bit of jank with a miniature. You literally just got to hold it down. This thing's so heavy. That port for the lighting is actually really handy. You basically just stuck a spigot in it with a K-clamp. And gaffer.
Once we've got our position locked, we start redressing. And then, more smoke. Once we've got our static in the can, we start getting tracking passes. Before we move to our last setup, there was an element in the original sequence we had to attempt. As the fated astronauts make their way towards the bizarre alien craft, Ash observes from the Nostromo, and we see glitchy camera feeds from their POV.
Yeah, we like our old school. Well, we're taking it a step further, possibly a step too far. There's some wicked shots in the film, very clever, where they use. I mean, I don't know actually how they kind of whoa crazy. Anyway. I don't actually know whether they shot it on film or whether, I don't know if they probably didn't even have digital cameras in those days. Sorry, I'm having a moment where I'm like, how did they do that? A lot of messing around. But what they achieved basically is a bunch of sort of POV helmet cam shots as they're making their way towards the ship. And everyone's getting a bit panicky, and it's a really nice thing because it sort of grounds it in a really human situation where you've got this kind of really shaky handy cam footage of the crashed ship as they're kind of looking up at it for the first time, and like that's then being sent back to Ash on the ship, and he's looking at it and getting all excited because he's a bad man. And so yeah, we want to recreate that. So we thought, well, let's get ourselves an old digicam. Thank you, Jamie. And we hooked it up to this old CRT monitor. So we're sending our feed through the composite cable, and then we're filming the screen directly with a phone using an app that creates loads of VHS distortion. So we've got a lot of distortion going on, basically just like crappy POV video helmet cam. It's worked really, really well. Really chuffed with it.
It was a nice mixture of old and new, isn't it? I think in the original they probably used fairly early tube-based video cameras, and yeah, by the looks of it, they did film off a monitor screen to get those results.
Yeah, yeah.
So what we're doing is a slightly updated version of that by using a relatively newer.
This one's only 25 years old.
Only 24, which
Well,
is
thereabouts.
young for us.
Absolutely.
While I was shooting, JP was occasionally disconnecting and reconnecting the composite cable, causing the signal to drop out and refresh, and it gave us some wicked RGB signal separation, along with that re-exposure effect as the cathode tube in the monitor refreshes the signal. But we're not done yet. If we could only get one of those astronauts in there.
Did you 3D print this overnight?
No, it was it was sculpted in about 20 minutes.
You kept the... What?
Over a light bulb.
I can see the bulb in it. Oh my word.
Yeah, I suddenly had a thought last night that it would have been great to 3D print this.
Yeah.
Because we realised yesterday we kind of ideally wanted that shot through the...
A little dirty over the shoulder, looking up at the ship, bit of, look at this, look at this.
So it's just another way of offering up
Oh, that's so good.
Foreground.
Because we were talking about it yesterday. It was like, oh, we could just put a light bulb in there and it'll be like a bit of visor, and he comes in with this. Unbelievable.
Oh, it's got a light as well on the back. I'll turn that on later. Yeah, it's modelling like plasticine. Modelling clay.
So he's then built, I say rudimentary, a kind of helmet around the light bulb, and then obviously stuck it. So that's one LED that you've then put the clay over the top and made 3 holes and then painted different colours. So it has the look of 4 lights. So it just, all of that stuff helps scale. All of those little details really help scale. And you know, we're only seeing it just a little bit, and just literally just bringing it over the front of the lens so it looks like they're looking over someone else's shoulder, and all of that. Just, yeah, it looks so good.
Yeah, getting that sense of depth and separation, and also feeling like we're part of a crew that's viewing it from a distance, and things like that can often help in terms of give you a sense of depth, but also perspective from what height are we at.
Yeah.
While I could play with these retro toys all day, we have one more setup to shoot. It's time for the ship's close-up. This time we're looking straight at it, and we want to see all that lovely detail, even in the shadows, so I stick a little bounce in there.
So in an ideal world, we would have shot at a much higher frame rate, like 120 or something like this, because that MicroFogger is so great. It has such a unique kind of wispy smoke to it, which is gorgeous. And if we could get that happening really slow, it would be amazing as a sort of an atmospheric addition. But in a relatively small space with the lights that we have, we just can't get the exposure at 120 frames. So we're sort of shooting everything at about 50. Which is about as much as we can do with the lights that we have. And then there is always an opportunity to sort of retime after the fact and slow it down a little bit. Just any extra frames you can get helps with that.
We make sure she's spotless for a close-up, and then we smoke the place up one last time.
What we've been doing is getting a clean pass with no smoke. So there's lots of detail in the ship, and we're seeing all of that. Smoke's beautiful, but of course it does start to take away a lot of that detail. Any moves we're doing repeated motion control passes, and what that basically means is, even though we've got the camera moving, we can layer up those shots and we can choose the degree of detail that we want to show of the ship versus the smoke passes, and it just gives us a lot more kind of dexterity after the fact, so that we can just get just the right amount of detail, just the right amount of smoke, and also the different layers of smoke, so some foreground, some background.
So all of our shots were done, as you saw, as a glorified tabletop style setup. The only thing moving in our scene was our camera and our atmospheric haze. To add further details to our scene, this can be done in the compositing stage by adding things like more rocks or added sky detail, things to further help sell the sense of scale and scope. Adding depth using 2.5D compositing can work for these types of shots, as the camera parallax is minimal. All we need to do is track our footage and place our flat artwork at the desired distance to create subtle additions to the shot that match the shifts in parallax. For example, in this shot I filmed some small 3D printed figures with tiny LEDs on their heads to mimic the crew approaching the ship. In the original shot, this was done fully in camera with small model toy figures and grain of wheat bulbs, pulled on a track in a very similar way. However, since our derelict model was way smaller than the original, it made more sense to shoot our figures separately, scale them accordingly, then add to our tracked footage. If we wanted to, we could 3D track our scene, which would give us solve data to fully unlock the possibilities in adding to our environment. We can add 3D objects to our scene that perfectly match our camera move, and will shift our added objects in perspective so as to integrate into our scene. For this shot, I wanted to add a little bit of life to our foreground crew members, so I took a simple 3D model of the character Kane that I found online, and imported the model into Actor Core AccuRig, an excellent piece of software that can quickly add a 3D skeleton to a bipod OBJ or FBX model. The process is super quick and easy, and I found some suitable motion capture animations within the software to apply to the model, that was then time offset and duplicated 3 times to represent the crew. These animated figures were then exported from AccuRig as an animated OBJ sequence into Element 3D inside of After Effects. As a final touch, I added the venting CO2 effect from the helmets by me blowing vape smoke from a straw. This was filmed on my phone by simply placing it on the floor and pointing it upwards, using the night sky as a black background to extract the smoke within the After Effects composition. It is really interesting to see from deleted scenes and camera tests from the movie how the planet's surface expedition was perhaps originally planned to be more of an elongated sequence. It's really cool to see the combination of front projection, matte painted set extension, and foreground miniatures all being used to help blend the live action studio shots together, to show the wide expanse of the planet's surface and the scale of the derelict ship. Even filming with our simplistic setup, it was a really good reminder that you may never truly know what shots might end up being used in the final cut of a film. Ultimately, an effects shot should only be used to help efficiently tell the story, which is why I think Alien is an excellent example of both visual storytelling through the editing of Terry Rawlings and the direction of Ridley Scott. Now, Alien is probably my favourite film of all time, and we knew going into this it was just going to be a bit of fun. We knew we weren't going to surpass the results of the original. We were just keen to see how close we could get to the feel of the original movie, using a much smaller model and an infinitely smaller budget. We were not trying to reproduce the shots in a pixel-perfect way either, although it was fun to see how close we could get to the sequence, using some cheeky compositing to drop our stuff over the original shots.
Ash, can you see this?
Yes, I can. I've never seen anything like it.
Let's get out of here.
We've got this far, we must go on. We have to go on.
Will you say that again?
Ash, if you can see this.
I'm going back to the console.
But we hope there might be something inspiring in this series for you out there to try on your own film projects. Maybe by mixing up some practical and digital techniques, you can find ways to create some really original looking results for the right project. Now, another reason to create these shots was to hand them over to our friend Michael Edwards. He has a YouTube channel and creates some fantastic modern movie trailers of classic movies. He's already included our The Thing title burn at the end of his excellent version of that trailer. So we contacted him to see if he could work his magic on creating a fresh looking trailer of Alien, where he could use a couple of our shots that hopefully don't stand out too much from the feeling of the originals. Now, I highly recommend checking out this trailer. It's very cool. The link is here, or it's also found in our description text at the bottom of this video. Thank you so much to Michael for his collaboration and hard work. Please go check out his YouTube channel. He has some fantastic videos on there, deserves a lot more views and a lot more love.
Well, that was a good time. We hope that this demonstrated how the detail achievable through resin print technology now enables us to create big, impressive vistas at a fraction of the scale once required. This is Tommy, last survivor of InCamera, signing off.
I pushed hard for smoke.